So, the 7-step goal setting process. Number 1, decide exactly what you want. Be specific. This is really important. Decide exactly what you want and be specific. It has to be so clear a child could understand it. Second of all, write it down and make it measurable. A goal that is not in writing is not a goal at all. In fact, if you were just to do number 1, number 2, and number 3, set a deadline and set sub-deadlines if necessary. Basic rule is that there are no unrealistic goals, there are merely unrealistic timelines, unrealistic deadlines. So if you set a goal and you don't achieve it by the deadline, what do? Set another deadline. Just move it back. Obviously, you misjudged. Remember, it's just a guesstimate of when you can achieve the goal. However, with a deadline, half the time you'll achieve it before the deadline. Always when I write down a goal, which I do every day, I say I achieved this goal by this date. So in other words, it's achieved anywhere between now and then. I don't say at the date, but by this date or before this date. But by is my favorite word. I achieve it by June 30th, 2011. I achieve it by December 31st, 2011. Achieve this goal by. And if all you did was this, decide what you want, write it down, and set a deadline, it will change your life forever. I've had people who've just staggered at the difference it made in their lives to write these goals down and just set a deadline on them. But that's not enough. Number 4 is to determine the obstacles that you'll have to overcome to achieve the goal. Remember, the question that we ask is, why aren't you already at the goal? If you want to earn twice as much, why aren't you already earning twice as much? What's the reason? What's holding you back? What's the constraint or the obstacle that's stopping you? Now, in 80% of cases, the 80-20 rule applies here. In 80% of cases, the obstacles between you and your goals are inside you. They're internal. They're not on the outside. So the mark of the superior person when they have a problem is they always say, what is it in me that's holding me back? What is it in me that's holding me back? Is it a lack of discipline, lack of time management, lack of a skill, lack of the ability to perform a particular area? What is it in me that's holding me back? And when you start with yourself, 80% of the time you'll say, well, this is my great problem. Because the number 1 obstacle in many cases is procrastination, and it shows you how to develop the habit of getting on with it and starting your most important task and just getting it done. And when you get into the habit of determining your most important task and then just doing it, your whole life explodes. Because after that, you start to get everything done. And you start to get more and more done. And not only that, you feel happy. As you do important tasks, you feel happy, your self-esteem goes up, you have more energy, your self-confidence goes up, you're motivated to do more things. So one little problem, procrastinating. People say, well, it's procrastination is what holds me back. It's taking the first step. Well, if you can overcome that, which is a learnable skill, you learn to procrastinate, by the way, by default. So what you do is you say, well, I'm going to overcome procrastination. And don't say, I'm going to do it tomorrow or next week. I'm going to take a year, and by the end of the year, I'm going to be one of the best time managers and result getters in the world. Just give yourself a year and work on it every day. And I can promise you, 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now, you're going to be a production powerhouse. You're going to be the most productive person in your industry. You're going to be getting so much done that people will just come around with cameras just to photograph you working. So determine the obstacles. Now, next is determine the additional knowledge and skills that you will require. And remember, to achieve a goal that you've never achieved before, you will have to develop skills that you've never had before. You'll have to do things that you've never done before. And here's the great breakthrough thought that changed my life at the age of 23, is that all business skills are learnable. You can learn any skill you need to learn, whether it's prospecting, presenting, closing, hiring, borrowing money, building businesses, marketing. You can learn any skill you need to learn. They're all just learnable skills. They're just laying there. Now, can you learn them in a week or a month? Not unless you're, a quick buck seeker. But can you learn them? Yes. But the point is that you can learn this stuff. Now determine, especially here's the question, ask yourself, what one skill, if I was absolutely excellent at it, would help me the most to achieve my goal? What one skill, and this is one of the greatest questions of all, this is the life changer for me, what one skill would have the greatest positive impact on your life? What one skill would help you the most to achieve your most important goals? Now, if you don't know the answer to this question, you have to find it out. You have to find it out because the lack of this skill is holding you back more than anything else. Here's a discovery, and this discovery again, 10 years of research by the head of Martin Marietta Corporation. What he found was that your weakest key skill sets the height on your success. Your weakest key skill determines the height of your income. It determines the height of your success in your career. It determines the speed at which you move ahead. If you have a whole bunch of skills, but you have one key skill where you're really poor, that skill holds everything back. My point is your weakest skill sets the height of your success. So you have to ask the question, what one skill would help me? And the answer to that is your weakest skill. It's always the skill that's holding you back. And the wonderful thing is that all skills are what? They are learnable. That means that you can learn the skill. What I'm saying is skills are learnable. They're laying there. Just bend over, pick them up, and say, by gum, I'm going to become good at prospecting. I've worked with people who have identified a skill, and it may have taken them 6 months or a year to master the skill and transform their lives completely, tripled their income, literally shot them to the top of their businesses, changed their whole situation in life for themselves and their family with one additional skill. And sometimes you're only one skill away from doubling your income. Sometimes you're only one skill away from doubling your income. And when you ask yourself, what one skill would help me the most? That's probably the answer. If you were absolutely excellent at that one skill that you could identify, you could probably double and triple your income. And so it's a learnable skill. Now, whenever we identify this skill, we find it's also a skill you don't particularly like. It's one you're not very comfortable with. Because of why? Fear of failure, fear of criticism, fear of rejection, fear of not doing it well, fear of embarrassment, fear of ridicule, fear of loss of respect of other people, and so on. So there's always a skill that we don't like. But why is it that we are uncomfortable in any skill area? Why is it that we are uncomfortable in any skill area? Because we're not good at it yet. So that's just a matter of time. Everybody who is good at any skill was once poor. Everybody who's in the top 10% started in the bottom 10%. Everybody who's at the front of the line of life started where? At the back of the line. And what hundreds of thousands and millions of people can do, 10.6 million self-made millionaires in America, all started with nothing, and they're all millionaires, multimillionaires, centimillionaires, 500 millionaires and billionaires and multi-billionaires. And they started with zero, zip, nada, nichts, rien. And they're no smarter than you. One of the great experiences of life is to run into a multimillionaire and find they're as dull as ditch water. As dumb and they're not, as they say, not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I mean, they're just average people, just average folk. Well, number 6, determine the people whose help and cooperation you will require. Who are they? Whose help and cooperation you will require. And then assemble all these details into a plan, organize the plan, and get started. Now, a plan is merely a list. It's a list of everything that you can think of that you could possibly do to achieve the goal. And then you organize the list by priority, what should you do first, and sequence, what should you do second. What can I do at the same time I'm doing something else, priorities and sequence. And then the goal setting exercise, I'm going to ask you to start to write these answers down. So please get your pen ready. This is really, really important. This is kind of the jelly in the jelly donut of this seminar. So please begin writing. What are your 3 most important goals in life right now? You have 30 seconds, write quickly. If you can't think of anything, write money, money, money. This is a very important exercise. It's called the quick list method. What we have found is that when you only have 30 seconds to write down a goal, your answers will be as accurate as if you had 30 minutes or 3 hours. So whatever your 3 goals that you wrote down there, 2 things. First of all, those are your biggest concerns in life. Second of all, they're eminently achievable. They were a little bit general, but it's interesting with your 3 goals. Take an example here. Is imagine that you are that your goals will show you 3 things. This is like a coin. Is your goals are your present. These are your goals today, but they also show you your past, because your goals will indicate the major problems in your life that you need to solve. And the 3 goals, by the way, I can guess in 80% of cases will be a financial goal, a relationship goal, and a health goal. You write down those goals, and they also tell you your future. So when you write down your 3 most important goals in life, they tell you in 30 seconds a snapshot of your past, present, and future. Where you're coming from, those are the goals, those are the problems in your life, where you are today, and what you need to accomplish, which will solve those problems. Past, present, and future. Okay, next exercise is what 5 things do you value most in life? Family, love, health, freedom, creativity, courage. What five things do you value the most in life? This is a very important question because of this question of clarity. Remember we started off talking about the self-ideal. Well, these values are really the core of your self-ideal. These are the core of what you really value, admire, care about more than anything else. And it's only when you're living consistent with your highest values that you feel truly happy. And the difference between successful, happy people and unsuccessful, unhappy people is successful, happy people have clear values. They know what's important to them. And they know what's important to them in order. And when you're absolutely clear about what your values are and in order, then it's easy to make decisions because that's what's right or wrong for you. And each person can have their own values as long as they are your true values. Now, how do you tell what your true values are? Well, the answer, it is only by what you do under pressure. So you can always tell when you're forced to choose what your values are. And sometimes by just simply changing your values and saying, no, from now on, I will always make this choice, you become a different person. And when you live consistent with your values, your self-esteem goes up, your self-confidence goes up, your self-image improves, you feel happier, more positive about yourself. A good friend of mine once said that all problems in life can be solved by a return to your values, by going back to what was true for you. The greatest of all human values, of course, is integrity. But what I've learned about integrity is the overarching value that guarantees all the others. Integrity means that you live consistent with all your other values. Is you always tell the truth, you always live in truth, you always speak the truth, and whenever you deviate from your own personal integrity, you'll always feel uncomfortable, frustrated, angry, and so on. So when you go back to the main value and living in truth, for you, you start to feel happy again, and everything starts to flow. So here's the third question, is what would you do, how would you spend your time if you learned today that you only had 6 months left to live? Imagine the doctor came to you with the final assessment and said, you're going to enjoy fabulous health for 180 days, and on the 181st day, because of a terminal illness, you'll drop stone dead. What would you do in your last 5 or 6 months? What would you spend your time on if you only had 6 months left to live? Now this is another values question. This question asks you what is really important to you in life. And you know the old joke is nobody in answering that question would write down, I'd like to spend more time at the office. When you answer this question, there's not a single material goal that appears. No money, no cars, no homes, nothing. When you write the answer to this question, they all have to do with your relationships and with your spiritual development. They have to do with the people that you care about and care about the most. And so it's really important that you be clear that if you only had 6 months to live, what would you do? And this brings us to question number 4, is imagine you won $20 million tax-free, and at the same time you found that you only had 10 years left to live. This is a great question that comes from Stanford University, by the way, is what would you change or do differently for your last 10 years? Now here's the point, is this question simply asks, is what would you do if you had no fear of failure at all? If you had all the money you needed, so you had no fear of failure at all, you could do anything you want. Many people will write down, I'd quit my job so fast they wouldn't even see me leaving. I mean, and what that means is that you're in the wrong job. If you would quit your current job if you had enough money, which many people would do, it means that you're actually wasting your life. As you're actually stuck in there, and you're probably stuck in there because you don't have enough financial reserves. And so you're caught in a bind, if you're caught in a vice, doing something you dislike because you can't afford to leave it. So when you ask this question, it'll tell you what you really should be doing with your life. You'd start a business, you'd run for public office, you would travel, you'd do things for your family. What would you do if you had $20 million? And that will tell you what you would do if you had no fear of failure at all. And whatever you would do as an answer to this is possible for you. It may not be possible tomorrow, but it's possible for you sooner or later. So what you do is you say, well, this is what I would really like to do. If I had all the money I needed, this is what I'd like to do. Now, how can you begin adjusting your life so you do that? People often say, well, I want to start my own business, so I wouldn't have to be answerable to anybody, but I don't have enough money. Well, nobody has any money. There's 1,001 businesses you can start for less than $100. There's a book on the book stands. Go and buy the book. 1,001 businesses you can start for less than $100. You can start a business out of your home with a computer. You can start it with going to scrap meets. You can start it with services. You can start it with what you cannot imagine. So don't say I don't have any money. If you don't have $100, well. So number 5, what have you always wanted to do but been afraid to attempt? You've admired other people who've done it. You've looked up to other people who've done it. You wished you could do that sort of a thing. Bungee jumping, deep sea diving, starting a business, running for office, writing a book, getting it published, becoming a public speaker, becoming a singer? What have you always wanted to do but been afraid to try it? The answer to that is what you've been put on this earth to do. This is your high purpose. Is something you've always wanted to do, but you're afraid, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? And it's absolutely amazing. It's sort of like kicking off in skiing. You get to the top and there's that long, long slope and you finally just push off. And once you push off, you start to move, but the pushing off is the hardest thing of all. I've always found that the key to success is to take the first step. And the greatest reason for failure is people have 1,000 reasons not to take the first step. Comfort zone, learned helplessness, fear of failure, fear of loss, is they won't take the first step. Everything follows from the first step. And the wonderful thing is once you've set a goal, you can always see the first step. The thing is, if you take the first step, you'll see far enough, take one step further. You can always see one step ahead in your life. But the critical thing is taking the first step. When you take the first step, 3 things happen. First of all, your self-confidence goes up when you take the first step. Second of all, you get feedback, which enables you to self-correct if you made a misstep. And third of all, you actually have more creative ideas on how to achieve the goal. That's why you'll find that action orientation is a key quality of successful people, is they decide something they want and they act. And in acting, everything starts to work for them. Now the next question is, what sort of activities or experiences in life give you the greatest joy and feeling of importance? These are what Maslow called your peak experiences. What are your peak experiences in life? What have you done in the past that makes you really feel wonderful, makes you happy inside, gives you a sense of joy, gives you a sense of pleasure? This sort of peak experience, what are they? And probably they'll fall into 3 categories. Things you do with your family, things you do for your physical health and well-being, things you do in your work where you're really successful and accomplished, and also things that you do in your private life, sports, skiing, ballooning, all kinds of things that give you a tremendous sense of excitement and joy. What are they? Now, whatever your answer to this question is what you should be organizing your life so you're doing more of it. Just like you should be gearing your life around this, because these are the source of life's greatest happiness and greatest pleasure. And you need to structure your life so you're doing more of them. And this is the last question. What one great thing would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail? If you could wave a magic wand and you could achieve any goal, short-term or long-term, big or small, what one goal would you set for yourself if you're absolutely guaranteed a success? What would it be? And the good news is that whatever you wrote down as an answer to that question is possible for you. Is you have the ability within yourself or outside of yourself, within your resources or within your contacts or somewhere, you have the ability to achieve that goal. Because you cannot write down a goal in answer to that question without simultaneously having the ability to achieve it. So the only real question is, how badly do you want it? How badly do you want it? And are you willing to do whatever is necessary and to make whatever sacrifices are necessary to achieve it? And that is the great question. The great question is, am I willing to actually put in the effort, to put in the weeks, months, years? Am I willing to learn the subjects? I have never written down a goal like this that I have not achieved. Some of them took me years to achieve, but I've never written down a goal that somehow 1,000 things will happen that are outside your imagination right now that will make your goal possible. But the starting point is for you to decide what it is. It's like deciding what your destination is for a long journey and be clear about the destination. You may have to take many detours and deviations along the way, but you will eventually reach that goal. Once upon a time, a traveler was walking the roads of ancient Greece, and he came across an old man sitting on a rock, and he asked the old man, he said, I'm lost. I'm trying to get to Mount Olympus. He said, can you help me get to Mount Olympus? He said, yes, he said, I'll tell you the way. He said, but if you really want to get to Mount Olympus, then just make sure that every step you take is in that direction. The old man turned out to be Socrates with a typical Socratic answer. If you really want to achieve anything in life, just make sure that every step you take is in that direction and not in 100 other directions at once. Most important exercise that we're going to do the next couple of minutes, next few minutes. So we say, you're going to make a list. You see the page there. You're going to make a list of 10 goals that you'd like to achieve in the next year or so. And these can be goals that you want to achieve by the end of the month or by the end of the year. If you want to, you can write longer term goals, but try to keep it, about a year, because 1 year goals tend to be the most motivational because you can actually see them. They're not that far away. The closer the goal is, the fewer the number of steps, the more motivated you are to start. And so 1 year goals seem to be the best. So What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write down 10 goals and write them as affirmations. I earn this amount of money by this date. I achieve this weight by this date. I drive this car by this date. And always just write a by. It's sort of like a use by date when you buy food in the supermarket. That by date tells your subconscious mind that you have a specific time that you want the goal. If all you did in your life was to write down your 10 goals and then take that page and fold it up and put it away somewhere where you wouldn't see it for an entire year. At the end of the year, you would take it out and it would be as though a magic trick has been done. And when you opened up your list, you'd be both happy and sad. You'll be happy because 8 of your 10 goals will have been accomplished in the most remarkable ways, in ways that you cannot imagine today. The number of coincidences would be beyond belief. And you'll be sad because you wish you had set more goals and bigger goals. Now, does this work? Yes. Does it work all the time? Yes. Does it work all over the world? Yes. I've taught it in 56 countries. And does it work? People come up to me and they always use these words, which you will use in time. And the words are, you won't believe what's happened to me. So all it requires is that you write it down. Now, once you've done this, that is not the end, because now we are going to plus this process. We say, so what you're going to do is you're going to review your list of 10 goals and look over these goals, and then ask what one goal, if you could achieve it within 24 hours, would have the greatest positive impact on your life. Which one goal would you select? And whatever it is, circle that goal. Which is the one goal if it would have the greatest positive impact on your life? Now, usually it's a financial goal. Sometimes it's a health goal. Sometimes it's a business goal or a relationship or family goal. Now, this goal becomes your major definite purpose. This becomes the central organizing point of your life for the foreseeable future. And it's very easy. Once you have decided upon this, and this is it. Now, it may change over time, but this is the one for you. So now what we're going to do is turn to the next page, and you're going to set a deadline on this goal. Remember, whatever you circle is possible for you to achieve, and sometimes far faster than you realize. But the starting point is to decide what it is in the first place, and then to write it down as you have done. And then what you do is you set a deadline. When do you want to achieve it? By this date. And then, third of all, you make it measurable. How will you measure that this goal has been accomplished? Well, you will have the money in your account. You will weigh a certain amount on the scale. Your business volume will be a certain size. But always put a number on a goal, because your subconscious mind needs a number. So set a deadline, make it measurable, and then we're going to go through this exercise and list the 3 biggest obstacles that are holding you back from achieving this goal. Now, the next question is, what additional knowledge and skill will you need to achieve your goal? If you could wave a magic wand and be excellent in 3 areas, is which areas of knowledge and skill? If you could do 3 things really, really well, what 3 things would help you the most to achieve that goal? Write them down. Next question is, whose help, cooperation, and assistance will you need to achieve the goal? Nobody can achieve anything by themselves. Sometimes it's finding a source of finance, finding a lender or an angel investor or a banker that will finance you. So sometimes you have to say, whose cooperation do you need? And as long as you don't care if they say no, then you just keep asking people. And it's quite astonishing what will happen. So whose cooperation and assistance will you need? You may need the assistance of your family at home. You may need the assistance of your boss. You may need the assistance of your partners and so on. So who are those people whose help you will need? And then one of the great questions you always have to ask is, what will you do for them to get their cooperation and assistance? What's in it for them? What's their benefit? And people only do things for their own reasons. So before you approach anybody, you should have thought through in advance how this will be a benefit to them, as well as being a benefit to you. And start off from that point of view. Appeal to their selfish interests in a very positive way. How will this be beneficial for you to help me to achieve my goal? Now, the next list is, take a list and write 7 things that you could do immediately based on your answers to the previous questions to achieve your major definite purpose. What 7 steps? What 7 actions could you take immediately? Remember, action orientation is everything. So there's the 20-80 rule that I teach in time management. The first 20% of time that you spend planning and organizing the steps will be worth 80% of the value of everything in accomplishing the goal. Sometimes it's the 90-10 rule. Sometimes it's the first 10% that you spent thinking through your plan and organizing the steps that's worth 90% when it comes to actually implementing the plan. I cannot tell you how important this is. All successful people think on what? They think on paper. And they think on paper. All their expressions are on paper. They think with a pencil and a pen in their hand. And they keep writing and rewriting and rewriting. So really important. Now the next step is I want you to write down the set priorities. What's the number one most important action you can take immediately to achieve your most important goal? And then number one, look over this list of 7 steps. If you could only do one thing and do it now and do it completely, which would be the most helpful in getting you started? And then ask the question again, what would be number 2? What would be number 3? Please write them down. The last question, and this is the key question of all, what one action are you going to take immediately to achieve your most important goal? And write it down in the present tense. I earn, I achieve, I commence, I begin, I do, whatever it happens to be, but write it as an action statement as opposed to a dangling statement like, start marketing. That's not an action. It's impossible for a child to understand and to evaluate if you've done it. So write it down very clearly and specifically so a child could take it and do it, or someone else could take it and do it. I have to congratulate you. What you've done is quite remarkable, and what you've done is only what the top 3% of people in the world have ever done. Is not only have you thought through all of these critical factors on goals, but you've written your goals, you've written 10, and you've selected number 1. That actually moves you from the 3% into the top 1% of people in the world today, top 1% of adults, because now you know what your major definite purpose is, and you've actually created a plan to achieve it. The only thing that counts now is will you follow through. And so therefore, no matter how big the goal is, always take the first step. The difference between success and failure is successful people take the first step. And that's what starts everything.